All right, welcome to another JacFab'in Friday. This week we're going to kind of go through the steps of what you would need to do this. This is a direct port meth injection. I made my own distribution rail. We're using compression fittings on the top, so we only need to flare one end of the hard lines, and we're using Double Zone 90-degree AN fitting nozzle holders. So we would flare the end of the hard lines to meet up with the nozzle holders, and Double Zone 1 gallon per hour nozzles. So anyway, we'll drill some holes, we'll tap some holes, do the distribution rail. I am missing a couple fittings because MasterCar sent me the wrong fittings. I need one more fitting for the center. This is where my nylon, I'm not going to use the hard line for the delivery of the meth. I'm going to keep the same nylon line that is already on my car for the delivery of the meth that's going to come right up into the center of this distribution rail and then disperse from here. These lines are all exactly the same length, so that way we don't have any uneven distribution. Say if for whatever reason the system bled dry and we don't want one cylinder to get the meth and one to not get the meth, from a dry restart. So they're all the same length. The idea behind my distribution rail here is coming in the center, the fluid will come out and around. Now, most distribution lines or distribution rails that I've seen, it comes in the front or the back. They can either have 4, 8, whatever coming out the side, 2 on each side. I wanted all 4 to come out the side, but I overanalyze all this stuff. And so when I put this distribution rail up to the water faucet with this end blocked off, granted it's low pressure, but you could see that in that particular setup, once the rail was pressurized, granted low pressure, not even distribution would come out. But when I had the inlet, when I put the faucet up to the center with both ends blocked, then I had a more even distribution of the fluid. Now, it's probably not such a big deal under the pressurized meth system, but in my mind, I figure, well, if it works like this with a water faucet, why not just do it how it works best with the water faucet? And that's going to give me the best distribution. That's why I made it like I made it. The distribution rail mounts to these ears up here on the intake manifold that ugly heat shieldy piece would go on, but I'm not going to use that in the future. And then I've got my nozzles down here. And so anyway, we'll go ahead and take you through the steps that I did to do this. Hopefully there's some useful information in there for you. So right here I've got this sped up. As you can see, I'm tapping the distribution rail that I have made for 1/8" NPT fittings. We're going to use compression fittings on this side, so we only have to do one flare. Hopefully that works out, but we'll go ahead and speed through this and then put the fittings in. So here I am installing the compression fittings, and you may notice that I'm installing all these fittings that you see here today dry. That's because I'm probably going to end up redoing the hard lines at some point, and basically I didn't want to have to fight with sealant as I change things. But when I do the final assembly of everything, I will be using the recommended sealant for meth injection systems, and that way hopefully we don't have any leaks. Okay, as you can see, I have the distribution rail mounted to where it's going to go. I've got these dumb long bolts with some spacers because I don't have the proper length bolts, but the distribution rail is going to mount onto these ears on the intake manifold. So now we've got to figure out where to put the injectors. You know, in the perfect world, I would mount them, you know, back here, shooting straight into the runner, but I need a flat surface to tap into, so really that kind of screws me, and I need to be ideally behind this seam on the intake manifold, right here, this seam, because if you look down in there, that's kind of where everything starts. We don't want to drill through the velocity stackish kind of area. These intakes have a real nice radiused port entrance, kind of like a velocity stack. So you know, we could go here on these circular sections. It gives you a nice even something or another that's still pretty far away. We could go a little farther down. I mean, really, you want to avoid painting the wall of whatever pipe you're going into. I know that's what 99% of people do, but it's not optimal, but it works. But really, there isn't a good way to avoid doing that on this intake manifold unless we go right here. That's going to be about our best shot at a straight shot into the intake port on the head, because if we go here as close to the seam as we can, the shot is going to come across and kind of, rather than from, say, here, blasting right into the wall. If we're coming here, it's almost a straight shot, yay, before it goes yay, the air is going to take over. So I guess I'm going to put these right here. So I'll drill some holes. We'll get the nozzles installed with the nozzle holders, and then I'll start looking at the hard lines. Okay, I've got my holes drilled. So now I'm going to go ahead and tap these. We'll get the nozzles installed with the nozzle holders, and then we'll work on the hard lines. Okay, I got all the holes tapped, and trying to get this to where you can see the threads. I've always been leery of doing something like this with the intake manifold because the plastic seems fairly thin. But you can see there that there's probably only about maybe 1/8 of an inch of material. And again, this is plastic, so under boost, I'm hoping that these nozzles aren't just going to blow out of there. But they're doing it on the EcoBoost, so I don't see why we can't do it. So I'll get the nozzles in with the holders, and then we'll get to the hard lines. Okay, you can see here I got the nozzles installed. Let me try and block some of this light. Maybe the shop lights are kind of messing with me here. So anyway, these are all 1 gallon per hour injectors. According to the Devil's Own website, they got a little calculator on there that you put in the engine displacement, the red line RPM, and the max amount of pounds of boost you're going to run, and it spits out a number. They don't really have a magic nozzle that is the right number that I need for my particular case at the moment. So basically, I think it said something along the lines of, say, 5.5 gallons per hour or something. So the main thing that I can figure here to make this easy for everyone, unless they're going wild, you got 4 1 gallon per hour nozzles in the intake, and you'll have a 5th one downstream from the throttle body that you can actually adjust easily, and that should really make things rock. Okay, as you can see, we have the nozzles with the holders installed. These are the Devil's Own 90-degree nozzle holders and Devil's Own 1 gallon per hour nozzles. I like the 90-degree stuff because it's fairly low profile. If you use anybody, to include Devil's Own or anybody else, Snow, whatever, their normal nozzle holders, straight, stick out about yay far. Where you've got some limited space to deal with here, so I like this 90-degree stuff. So anyway, we're going to run some hard lines from these guys over to the distribution rail on the this side. And this hole here, McMaster-Carr messed up and sent me the wrong fitting, so this is going to be a push to connect like you're used to seeing, and you'll run your regular nylon tube or whatever the tube is they send you with the stuff. Bam, it'll just push right in there. These are compression fittings, and then the only end we'll have to flare is the end that goes on this side. So anyway, I've got the flare tool, I've got the hard line, so we're going to do some equal length hard lines, you know, just, I don't know, for peace of mind, I guess, for a theoretical even flow. So basically I'm going to go sit down and I'm going to figure out how to get from here to there, find my shortest distance, find my longest distance from there to there to there to there, and basically get to where I need to with my long ones, and on the short distance figure out how to waste some tube without hindering the flow. So anyway, we'll do some hard lines and we'll wrap it up for this week. Devil's Own Injection, unofficial sponsor of JacFab. So I've got my all my tools here. I've got this sweet 180-degree tube bender. Picked this up off Amazon for 20 bucks. This thing's awesome. It's got your degrees. It's pretty cool. It'll do 3 different sizes of tubing, and I need to measure the bend radius so I can do this a little better. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it, freewheeling it. So far it's going real well. I've got this sweet cutter. Got this from McMaster-Carr, about 20 bucks. The body seems like it's plastic, but it seems like it does a good job. I would like it to be metal, but for the price, I wasn't going to complain. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this dummy tube to 18 inches long. Every one of my lines is going to be 18 inches, so that way they're all equal length and there will be no discrepancies in the flow distribution. Not that it's a huge deal once it's all pressurized, but if for whatever reason it were to bleed back and one line shorter than another or one line's longer than another, by the time your meth hits the nozzles, ideally you'd want it all to hit at the same time. So that's why all my lines are the same size, or length for that matter. Bam. Okay, so these are just brake lines that you can buy from any auto parts store. The ones I bought were 40 inches long. These aren't what I'm gonna go with, but it's nice and cheap and readily available anywhere. That way when you mess a piece up, you can just run to the store, buy some. I think I paid 12 bucks for 80 inches of this stuff. So for my dummy lines, to get this all figured out before I actually get the stainless, because I can't get the stainless around here, I have to mail order it. So I bought this brake line, and it's going to bend the same, it's the same size. It'll really get me in the ballpark, and that way I'm not messing up a bunch of expensive stainless that I have to mail order. So another trick I like to do when I'm bending something like this, I'll take a piece of welding rod and I'll use that as my initial this is where everything needs to be kind of test fit. So I've already done 2 of the lines here. I got 2 more to do. So basically, you know, I'll stick my welding rod in like so, and say, okay, this needs to be bent here. Okay, that kind of matches up with the other one. Maybe bend it a little more. Okay, so I'm looking at it straight on. Okay, so now I got to kink over this way. So we're going to take this, bend it like so, get it to where it's in the center of the runner where my nozzle is. And okay, we need to bend it down a little bit, and then we're going to kink it back like so. Okay, now we're in line with the nozzle, so we're going to come down here and trying to fake this radius of what the tool would have. And so basically, bang, there's your line, done. So now I can take this and I can transfer all my bend areas with a marker onto my hard line, and that's going to get me pretty damn close to where I need to bend it, to where when I bend that hard line, it's just going to come out and it's just going to fit. So the way I got this set up, it's pretty symmetrical from left to right. It's just kind of flip-flopped, reversed. So I'm not going to use this one because I've already made another one, and this guy is going to be my template that I'm going to use to do this. The marks will be the same. I'll just bend it reverse of what I would for this side, because this side kind of kicked over here, this side's going to kick over here. That way to get from your distribution rail to the nozzles, and we're just going to go slam. It's going to work. So let's see here. I got my Sharpie marker. And granted, this isn't perfect and it doesn't account for the radius of the bender, but it's going to get me there and it's going to work pretty good. So I'm going to go like so. Actually, it's helpful if you mark these all the way around, because that way when you're turning it and trying to figure it out in the bender, you can turn it around and see where your point of bending is going to start. And so basically I'll line up kind of the center of the radius with the bend on my mark there. There's my next bend, I'll mark that. And same for the next spot. Line that up there, mark out that bend, and then I will mark the last point of my last bend, which will start here. And you're going to want to test fit this at every bend, because these marks are subject to change based on the radius of your bender. So, no big deal. Now, we'll get this guy in there. And this bender's pretty slick. I'll bring it over here and show it to you. So, here you can see my 0 degree, goes all the way to 180. You just pull the handle, has a nice smooth bend. So anyway, we'll go ahead and bend this guy to about like so. Slide that in. That's perfect. Look at that. So now need to bend it a little more. Put that back in. Line my mark back up. Flip it down. Okay. So now we're going to bend it to there. Okay. Okay. It's looking pretty close. So our next bend, get this in the bender, line it up with the mark. So now you're going to want to look at this and and say, okay, they're straight on, right? If I wanted to bend this all straight, great. So I'm gonna wanna kick this to, let's see, this way, we're gonna go this way. So I'm gonna turn this like so. Yeah. So this, bang, right? And we're gonna go ahead and bend. Yeah, that's nice. Very good, like so. And what's nice about this is, once you get going, you just write down, which is what I should be doing, or remember, which mark that you're bending this to on each bend. Okay. So, I'll take my finger. This is not real good. We got about this much distance from the tube to the end of the nozzle holder. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of this mark, this junk. This much, this much. So going to mark happily. It'll be like so. Degrees. Okay. It's a little far, but that's all right. We're close. Back in. There. Easy. Put our AN nut on. So one thing that I didn't mention, that must have got cut out somewhere because I did talk about it, but when you're bending these hard lines and you're flaring for AN fittings, usually there's a ferrule that'll go on, that'll butt up against the flare, and then the nut goes over that. You got to put that ferrule on before you start bending, because once you start bending, that thing's not going to go on and you're going to screw yourself and have to throw away that hard line. So anyway, keep that in mind. Got Pure Leaf Unsweetened Black Tea, unofficial sponsor of JacFab. Hopefully, this last line will go a little better than the other one did. Alright, so I'll bring this up here. You see our 90-degree nozzle holders for AN fittings. I got our 1 gallon per hour double zone injectors. Sweet hard lines come up to the distribution rail. Compression fittings. So this is done. I'll probably end up redoing these lines a couple times, just to make sure that I'm happy with what I end up with before I do the stainless. I probably want to try and get them a little closer to the intake manifold, but for a first shot, you know, I did all 4 lines in under 45 minutes, so I think that's pretty good. And didn't have to scrap anything, didn't have to run to the store or buy anything else, so I'm pretty happy with that. This would work, you know, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I'd like it to look a little better. Not that this looks bad, but I do want to be a little closer to the intake manifold to kind of save a little bit more space. But anyway, that's this week's JacFab'in Friday. Thanks for watching. So here in the near future, once I get a better set of these lines, I'll probably make one more set and flare these brake lines for the AN fittings. we'll build some kind of test stand, if you will, and I'm going to test just a single nozzle that you would normally put before the throttle body versus direct port, and direct port with the fifth nozzle, and see, I'll hook a vacuum up to this thing somehow and pull the meth through it as it's spraying and see, is there even distribution with a single nozzle? Is it better with is it better with direct port? And when you add the fifth nozzle, what happens then? So I want to find out all that. That's going to be pretty cool. So be sure to check back. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe, like, check back. Thanks.